Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Jules and on this channel I like to talk about all things colour related as well as sketchbook tours and some of illustration process videos. If you are a returning viewer, you might be thinking that this layout looks a little bit different to usual. These are not my usual tools that I share here on this channel, but today I wanted to talk about the interaction between watercolor and graphite. That's one of my favorite combinations of things. I think that graphite could be one of the most underrated art tools in our armory. And I wanted to have a look at a few different ways of using these things together, what the effects are, and which one might be right for you in your projects. So today I have brushes for my watercolor, and then I have a couple of different pencils. I have a mechanical pencil, a water-soluble graphite pencil, and this blackring pencil, which I think I will just use for setting things out. And then I also have this little tin of water-soluble graphite by Artgraph. So it looks like this. It's basically just like a watercolor. I used this for a sketchbook process video last year, earlier, like I think it was in April, when I went away for a weekend. It was such a nice little cozy video. So if you'd like to see me using this in practice more, then go check it out. Otherwise, I wanted to see a little bit today about mixing this with watercolor, seeing how the two layer together, how they interact, and then maybe there'll be a little time lapse of an illustration at the end as well, which might be a bit of a sneak peek into a new project. So without further ado, I'll get a page set up and let's get into it. So to begin with, I hope you all have your scientist hats on right now, because I think we're going to do some experiments. Sorry about the camera shake, still working with the new setup and figuring out how to avoid that, but we'll do our best. My plan is to do, for each of these boxes, to do a different approach in terms of adding shading to a shape using graphite. So in the first one, I think I'm going to use my mechanical pencil, and then the second one I'm going to use my water-soluble graphite pencil, and then in the third one I'm going to use this water-soluble graphite. So let's just say, for example, that we have a shape. I'm also going to try and work on the focus issues. But yeah, so say we have like a shape, just like a couple of intersecting curves, like so. And then maybe we want to add some hatching lines as a little shading aspect. Maybe this is like on a part of an animal or a cloud or something. This is just for illustration purposes, so there isn't really a plan here, so don't judge my drawing skills too hard. Just giving you a little bit of an idea by adding these shading lines. Okay, so for the second one, I kind of want to do a diagonal line through this box. And in the top half, I'm going to do the same thing. Oops. Sharpen that a little bit too much. I did find that the water-soluble graphite, a little bit softer than regular graphite. Very pleasant to draw with though. But just adding a couple of little loose lines, and we'll just see how they dissolve when we add water is what I'm thinking. I hope you can't hear any construction noise outside. They are still doing this massive construction work outside my house, but I'm just doing my best to ignore it. And then in the second half, I think I'm going to do something a little bit more like shading. So just gradually shading from light to dark, which I think is going to shake the camera so much. So I'm just going to do that, and then we'll cut to when I'm done. Okay, so hopefully that will be enough to give us an impression of how these two different approaches work. This is my water-soluble graphite pencil, by the way, is a Faber-Castell 4B graphite aquarelle. Not that you can really read it, but if you look up these, you'll find them. And then finally, I want to use some of this water-soluble graphite. So as you can see, you just take a wet brush to the surface and It's kind of hard to see, but because it also absorbs some of the water, but you do pick up the graphite on the brush. I'm going to do the same thing, just create a curve here. I love these bubbly shapes. I doodle them a lot when I don't have a plan for what to draw. Just and then we can sort of wash it out. And I want to see how this reactivates, like to what extent it reactivates when we add watercolor over the top. Let's just also see how it moves a little bit on the paper, huh? It's a very interesting product, this one. I see a lot of people doing videos specifically on this, so I didn't want to go too far into the details of it, especially because I'm not a professional, but I do enjoy using it a lot, especially for sort of abstract sketches. And just add a line up here as well, so we can see how much it smudges. Because I don't know how this stuff reactivates with water after it's dry. Okay, so time to try adding some colour to these. I have these 4 colours on my palette. I chose a red, yellow, green and blue just for our basic testing applications. And the red that I have is these are all from Roman Schmall, my favourite watercolour brand for my testing and day-to-day art. And I have this quinacridone Warm Scarlet, which is a little bit pinker in person than it is on camera, but it's a lovely colour. And I figured that because graphite does so well usually with mixing with bright colours, since it really tends to mute down all of the other colours that you mix with it, that we would choose some bright colours. So to start out with, I'm going to use this quinacridone Warm Scarlet, and I'm just going to go over this little patch over here where I'd use the mechanical pencil, and we'll see what the effect is like. So yeah, just following my contour lines as best as I can. This is a beautiful colour. I prefer it to the quinacridone Cherry Red, which is a fan favourite amongst Roman Schmall enjoyers, just not my cup of tea. Also, hope you can't hear my fridge. I keep meaning to get a new fridge. It's one of those things that you just don't want to spend money on, you know. But as you can see, the normal mechanical pencil lead, when it comes back into focus, the normal mechanical pencil lead does not smudge at all with the application of the watercolor. So in the end, you might want to use some other method to emphasize the shading. So you could also mix a little bit of a darker color in there, or, you know, just enjoy that sort of style of illustration where you have this very flat color and then you just use the hatching lines to shade, or just use the regular graphite to shade. So that's one approach. So next we'll look at the water-soluble graphite pencil, and for this one I will use my quinacridone Gold. Love this colour, and it has the potential, I guess, to mix some nice browns if it does solubilize the graphite, and we'll see what the patterns are like with the hatching lines and then with the shaded area. So not sure how much water is best to have on my brush here, but we will give it a go. Let's just see. So you can see immediately that graphite is smudging a little bit, and it's sort of mixing into a bit of a green with the quinacridone Gold. And I have a decent amount of water on my brush, but not that much. We'll have to see what it looks like when it's dried, because I wonder how much it will bleed, like in post, you know, like if I just don't touch it anymore, what it will do. This is one of the things which is, I think it's really important to experiment with your supplies and see exactly how they behave. So I'll do the bottom half in a different colour, just to keep things interesting. And the colour I will use is Hooker's Green, which is a mixture of Nicolazo Yellow and Prussian Blue, for anybody interested. But for the purposes of this video, really just isn't about the watercolour, it's just serving as an example. And I'll try and get a similar amount of pigment to water ratio on my brush, you can see in the corner of the frame there. And then let's just see if we wanted to, could we mix these on the paper? I think the answer is yes. So I'm just going to take a little of the excess off my brush and see if we just have like basically some plain water. Oh, sorry for the camera shake. Yeah, you get a really interesting effect when you just drag this out. So at this point, what you effectively have is a mixture of the graphite and the watercolor. You're just mixing them on the paper instead. I think you could use this to make some really interesting effects. I won't drag it out the other side. I will just do that one for now, but I will just activate these other little patches I made. I really love this effect, actually. I'm glad I tried this. Just going to do the same thing and make sure that we have an interesting sort of gradient going on here. Oh, we're going to get a little bit of a bleed, but that's okay. That's just watercolor. I love that effect. Wow, that's so interesting. I'm so glad I tried that. And then finally, I'm hoping that this is dry-ish, I think. Where we painted with the water-soluble graphite first, and we'll do a layer over the top. And I have this French ultramarine. You can't see it, but you'll just have to believe me. And it's a granulating colour, but not like super granulating, so I hope that it won't interrupt our experiments too much. But I'm just going to do a simple wash over all of this, I think, and just see what happens if I don't disturb it too much, just give it a go. So here we go. I love that colour. And it definitely seems like the water-soluble graphite, like when you paint it on, doesn't shift as much as when you use the water-soluble graphite pencil. Like it's not immediately bleeding like the other one did, and it doesn't seem to be mixing so much on the paper. So you can basically just see the shading lines that I made underneath the watercolor. A little bit more like the mechanical pencil, but this way you can sort of paint it on, I guess, so you can get a bit more of a painterly effect. So hopefully that's interesting to see 3 different ways we can use watercolor and graphite together in some sort of layering scenario. And having done these tests, you can see I now have 4 little puddles of colour on my palette. And as you may have predicted, my plan is to mix all of these with my water-soluble graphite and just see what range of tones we can get with these quite bright, saturated watercolours. Exactly what the options are when it comes to mixing with these. Because I've used tentatively used in one illustration this process already, and I really enjoyed how it turned out, so I wanted to experiment a little bit more, and I figured what better place than in a video. So just adding a little bit more pigment to these puddles here. And then we're going to add some graphite. So my problem with this graphite is that it's very hard to know how much you have picked up on your brush, because there's no obvious dent, obviously, in the graphite, and then on the brush you can just tell that there is graphite there, you know, you can't tell how much. So sometimes I find it like nice to create a little puddle of the solubilized graphite, which, by the way, has a really interesting texture because graphite is almost slippery as a substance, and it has not a granulation, but there are particles in this when you solubilize it, so it's kind of interesting to work with. But nonetheless, let's just take a little bit of this on my brush. Now I can kind of conceptualize how much I have. And let's see, when we mix it with the quinacridone warm scarlet, what does that look like? Sometimes I also find that you need a little bit more water to get these things moving. It's a very thirsty kind of pigment, the graphite. So this is a sort of a muted dusty rose. Let's see. Maybe if we just do... Yeah, so you can definitely tell that there was that saturated quinacridone colour underneath, but it definitely has that sort of duller tone of the graphite going through it. A lot more muted. So what happens then if we add even more of the graphite? And you really have to experiment with this to see for yourself. This is not a terribly expensive product, this water-soluble graphite. So, you know, if you're doing an art order, you know, maybe consider just picking up a little tin of this. It lasts forever. I've had this for over a year. I don't use it every day, but I certainly haven't even noticed a dent in it. So now you can see this is more heading into the browny mauve kind of section of the color spectrum. And so you can get, it also is a great way to add value range to colors which can be lighter. So this quinacridone warm scarlet doesn't usually have a huge value range, but if you were interested in these sort of moody, muted colors, then maybe adding a little bit of this water-soluble graphite might give you those tones that you were looking for. Alternatively, if you have colors in your palette that you never use because they're just too bright for you, then maybe this is another way to approach muting them down. I'm just going to get a little more of the graphite here for us to use, and then I'll jump straight into the next color, which is this quinacridone gold. And as we saw in the test here, I noticed that it started mixing into a bit of a greenish tone when I added the graphite. And that's not entirely surprising, because I know that, for example, Sandy Hester and other artists say that one of their favorite ways to mix greens, muted greens, is by mixing black and yellow. And graphite isn't black, obviously. It's a little bit softer. It's more of a grey and a little bit shimmery as well. But it would make sense that it would follow the same trend. I'm going to grab a little bit more of the graphite. Like I said, it's kind of hard to tell how much you have sometimes, or how much is the right way to do it. The only way to learn is just to experiment and keep trying and seeing what you like best. So this deeper tone is definitely heading into olive green, I think. And it's definitely a really interesting texture that you get from adding the graphite. Wow, that's a super interesting color. You'll have to let me know in the comments, by the way, which colors you would like to see mixed with graphite, or if you have this product and you haven't used it, or you have another way that you like to use it. And also, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy this video so far, because I really enjoy making videos for you guys, and it's always so encouraging to see our little community grow and have new people leaving comments. Replying to your comments is one of my favourite parts of my week, so it means a lot to me. More graphite, and we'll mix it with this Hooker's Green. It appears that I may have mixed a little bit more of the, put a little bit more of the Hooker's Green pigment on the paper. Okay, there we go. So this is like a nice foresty olive. Just going to put this here. I don't think we're going to fit 4 on because I left too much space. Oh well. That's what happens when you start without a plan. I really like what this does to greens. I think that the grey plus green mixture is one of my favourite ones with this graphite. And if I have managed to insert a little picture of an illustration that I've made with these, then you will see exactly what I mean. And then adding a little bit more of this graphite. It also does tend to warm up, like you get much more out of it when you've added a little bit of water already. So it's not always so hard to re-wet. My only problem is I don't like to just go with my brush with the paint on it into the graphite, so I find myself having to wash my brush quite a lot because it's not really possible to clean off the graphite, you know, so I don't want to contaminate it. But this is a lovely muted green-grey, quite deep. Like lots of value range in that. I really think that one of the major advantages of the graphite is that value range and how it looks. It doesn't produce a very smooth wash. As you can see on the palette, when you mix the graphite with the watercolor, you do get this sort of separation, and the mixture has a very interesting texture. So if what you're looking for is like super flat washes, these might not be the mixtures for you. However, if you're looking for texture in your illustrations and maybe a little bit of interest and some moody colors, then maybe try it out, you know, you might be surprised. And then the final mixture I wanted to do is with this ultramarine blue, and I am a little bit intrigued because, you know, ultramarine blue is a granulating color, and this graphite also has its own texture. And I don't think I've tried this mixture yet, so that's quite exciting, isn't it? Look at this, I'm making a mess. Making a mess is one of the best things about doing art. You know, there's not many times in the day when making a mess is encouraged, but when I'm when I'm making these videos for you guys. It certainly is. And this is a lovely cloudy grey. Not sure if it's coming across that well on camera, but I am really loving that. It's quite deep. But I guess if we add a little bit more graphite, we'll see if we can push it more towards the grey side and see where that gets us. You'll notice I haven't washed it out at all. I just wanted to have a quick look at the sort of mass tone, if you like. I'm not sure how different it would be, or I don't think that it looks that amazing when you wash it out into a super light tone, because I think you mostly just see the texture from the graphite and it separates a little bit too easily. So let's just have a look. Yeah, so with the ultramarine blue and a lot of the graphite, you get this really sort of beautiful off grey. I guess it might be a little bit similar to the Derwent Graphitint pans, or if you have the Graphitint pencils, then maybe it's similar to that. The difference here will be that you can control which pigments you're mixing, because I know that, personally speaking, one of my favourite colours of the Graphitint pencil is the port colour. They call it port. It's like a red with graphite mixed in, but it's not light fast, which is, you know, not a deal breaker, but a little bit annoying. Whereas here, I can mix any of my reds with graphite and produce whatever I like for the sake of one small tin or one pencil. So I hope that these tests were helpful and or interesting. If you'd like to see how I use these colours in an illustration, then do stick around, because I will be doing a quick time-lapse of something from a project that I have going on right now, which I may talk about in another video. And yeah, let me know again in the comments what you think of these mixtures, whether you would ever use this in your work, and I'll see you at the end of the video to sign off. So welcome to the end of the video. As you can see, today I painted this cursed little Bulbasaur. I think he's super cute. I will have put a picture of actual Bulbasaur on the screen if you're not sure what this is referring to and you just think this is some cursed little guy. My current project is to draw Pokemon in the style of medieval illustrations, and I think it's going quite well. And I think this technique of mixing the graphite with the watercolor is a really perfect one for these style of paintings, because I just love the textural variation and the way that the colors are all super muted, and the way that like the layering is limited, so you kind of have to go with a looser, more chunky style, and I love it. And I love him. I think he's very cute. As you can see, this has made a wonderful mess on the palette where this graphite has sort of granulated out. Either or, let me know what you think of this in the comments down below. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe, and perhaps most importantly of all, share it with anyone you think would be interested in this kind of content. You know, we're always looking to reach new people with this channel. So yeah, really appreciate it if you do that, and I will see you all next week with another video. Bye everybody.